morning, everyone. How is everyone doing? Just tell me the energy levels. Is it? Yeah, that's good. I was hoping that all of you managed to grab a cup of coffee so we can start this energized, or popcorn, or all the exotic snacks that we have at the conference. So I want to start off by a story. So as you can see, a couple of weeks ago, I was in Peru. And we were going to explore Machu Picchu, and there was this Peru rail train, which was really cool, old school style. And we were standing there to embark on the train, right? So it's like 10 meters until you get to the train. And oh God, I got checked my ticket and my passport 10 times in that 20 meters. And it was quite interesting, right? Because I had all my stuff, I had a big puffer jacket, and every time I'm putting away my passport, and these people are like, again, please, your passport and your printed ticket. And I was like, okay, like how many more times do we need to verify? Like how much crime is it happening on this Peru rail train that I need to show my ticket this many times? And it triggered in me some kind of post-traumatic stress. And I was thinking, I was like, where do I have this feeling from? Like, where is this coming from? Where did I feel again like this? And suddenly I was like, I know where. When I was interacting with one of the customer service chatbots. So I was talking to it. You don't have to know German, but it's just more about the whole process. So it kept being like 1, 1, 3, 2, and then I still didn't manage to get what I wanted after 20 minutes of sending it random numbers. And I was like, what can I do? Then I start rage texting it, like all of us probably do, being like, connect me to a human agent. Please connect me to a human agent. And it kept ignoring me. It's like, I'm sorry, 1, 2, or 3. And I was just like, okay, that's not gonna work out for me. And can I get a quick raise of hands of who experienced something similar with customer service chatbots? Okay. You can look around, there's literally everyone. So it's a very painful topic. And today we're actually going to talk about how we're moving from this pain to actually nice customer experience. And of course, to make this more interesting and entertaining, we're gonna embark into a very famous train, Orient Express. All of you probably know the Murder on Orient Express movie. So we're gonna kind of do a little bit of a murder discovery in this talk and try to understand what's happening, right? What's happening with user experience? What's happening with AI agents, like AGI? You know, we hear all of these cool things. At the same time, every single person in this room is having issues with rigidity of trying just to find out, how do I return my order? Or how do I track my lost order, etc.? Like, how do we do these basic things in a nicer way? And not in a reactive way, but in a proactive way, right? So first of all, to understand why we're even bothering, right? It should be quite intuitive that customer experience matters. But here I bring to you the BCG number, $2 trillion opportunity. And this refers to basically companies who would be able to seize these values through personalized experiences, right? And we're not asking for much, right? We're just asking for them to be logical, to follow the path that is quite clear from our point of view, from the customer point of view, right? And of course, if they do this, then there's clear business impact on their business. And through technology, what are some things that we can do, right? We can give agility to the companies in order to innovate, in order to move with their customers. We can improve our performances through actually creating scalable solutions. So it's not about just catering to Nensi's needs, but it's about catering to the needs of everyone in this room, right? And their huge user base. And of course, it's also about just understanding what it takes to do that, right? And let's have a look. Okay, so who killed user experience? First suspect, data. Second suspect is going to be organizational structure. And finally, complexity. So we're going to look at these things and try to understand if they are really the problem, or is it just, an excuse that the companies bring to us? And this is very important, right? Because all of us also work at organizations that I'm sure do personalization to some extent. But the thing is that oftentimes working in the field and working as a solutions architect, and a quick pause there because I always say it as if everyone knows it, who knows what a solutions architect does? Okay, then quick intro of what a solution architect does. So I work with enterprise retail customers in Germany to help them design solutions in the cloud to make them scalable, performant, and innovate with them, right? So I'm supporting their cloud journey. Essentially, my daily routine is about connecting with the customers, identifying their problems, and identifying ways to solve those problems. So one thing that I hear a lot is, oh, we don't have enough data. And I feel like that's always a very sneaky lie because when I talk to them, they actually do. And when we go into the deep diving, into connecting with data engineering teams, analytics teams, it turns out that we are actually storing a lot of data because in this day and age, customers are interacting so much with companies. Essentially, all of us probably have our phones or like tablets with us at least 10 hours a day. And of course, we're interacting in one way or another, right? And all of that is actually being stored. Why? Because when we were saying data is the new oil, when that was the hype of the times, everyone was like, yeah, we need to store every bit of data, right? So that was the hype. Everyone did that. And then when it was the time to do the next step, it was all too much. It was like, okay, maybe we need more. Maybe we didn't capture this. But no. The answer is that we don't need more data. We just need to really be able to connect the data with the context. And that's the important bit here. And of course, like, it's not about easiness of it. And I know that it's challenging. It's not that easy. But today we will deep dive a little bit into how you can do that. So at least when you leave this room, you can go to someone and inspire them, maybe connect with your data engineering team. They're going to think you're bringing them a new problem, but you should tell them, no, listen to this. This is super exciting. So that's the first suspect that we have in this murder. The second suspect that we have is complexity. So working with enterprise organizations, right, the big retailers, let's say ASOS, Zalando, Amazon, we hear a lot about this overhead that gets accumulated as the company becomes bigger and bigger, right? So there is some tech debt, there is some things happening in the background, and people seem to lose the understanding of what's happening. And they're like, okay, it's too complex, we cannot tackle this. It's too complex to understand. I recently had a call with a CRM team of a very big organization that was saying, I just asked them, what's the value chain? What's the funnel that your customer is going through? And they told me, there are too many of them. And I was like, yeah, but we should identify all of them in order to understand how to improve this, right? And we also need to be able to distill information and distill mechanisms that don't make sense. And another like use case of this is a customer is showing me a web page that they have, not their homepage, but something like deeper. It's like, we want to build a solution specifically for this page because it has this unique content and we want to personalize it. I was like, that sounds great. And they were like jumping right into solutioning. And I'm like, wait a second, can we take a step back? What's the impact of this? What's traffic on this page? And they go, it's 0.2% of their user base is going into that page. I'm like, okay, so we're personalizing for fun, or are we personalizing actually to improve experiences, right? Because in the end of the day, we can always improve something. It's a never-ending story. Something can be improved all the time. But the question is there the value back from improving it? And is there somewhere else that we can invest that same amount in order to get something back? And again, this is not to sound too selfish. Getting something back is also giving, right? Like that you're giving better customer experience to the bigger amount of people. So again, no, probably not complexity as well. But we don't know yet, right? We have to uncover everything. So we go to suspect number 3. And here we're talking about organizational structure. And very, very often when we're talking about launching new products, when we're talking about innovating on behalf of the customers, one of the core problems that we hear is that, oh, that's actually another team responsible for that. And I'm like, okay. And I ask a marketing team, I'm like, okay, how can we look at the numbers of the page visits, this and that? Oh, that's actually the analytics team. And I'm like, okay, let's go to analytics team. We go to analytics team and say, oh, but we don't actually have that data in the tables where we pull it from to create the dashboards. Can we go to the data engineering team? And I go to the data engineering team. So it becomes this whole journey for me as a Dora the Explorer, you know, going and talking to every team, trying to find out who can solve this. And the reality of it, when you get to the point where you have scoped your product, when you understand how to innovate, the key there is to have one person from each of those teams on board. It shouldn't ever be like, oh, our business teams came up with this awesome idea to improve the customer experience, and then the tech teams are super not on board. Or like you spend 2 months talking with a business team, and then the tech team is like, no, we have other priorities, so we can't pick that up, right? So it's a lot about alignment when especially we have decoupled teams, we have decoupled tools, etc., right? So this brings some kind of friction into the whole process of innovating and improving the customer experience. And I kept saying, okay, we need to innovate, we need to improve customer experience, and the natural question comes, how exactly, right? And that's exactly when we managed to come to agentic AI. So before we were there, we had machine learning. Right? We had machine learning models that were trained on specific data sets, and they were working fine. They were doing what they were supposed to do, right? So we had, I don't know, recommendation systems, we had some demand prediction, etc. So we had forecasting models, and they were doing fine with the limited amount of data that we were fitting in on the specific task that we were giving. And then the world got a bit more exciting with generative AI. And now we suddenly have these huge models that are trained on vast amount of data. And suddenly you can interact with them through natural language. It's not anymore inputs, outputs. And that's it, right? Now we have way more opportunities to also interact with our users. And then we met agentic AI. Now it's like about autonomous systems that can handle complex situations, that can understand the intents, and all of these things that have essentially they're mimicking human reasoning, planning, all these things. Like, it's quite fascinating if you have ever used an agent. And can I get a quick raise of hands who has worked with agents, built one, interacted with one? Okay, a lot of you, which is amazing. So you know, when you actually go and look at the traces of agents, it's fascinating to see how they're reasoning, and that it's exactly the same process that you would do. You're like, oh, this person is telling me this, so probably I need to do that. And that's exactly the output that you get from the logging traces from an agent, right? So super exciting. And of course, everything is exciting, but we also need to give a bit of kudos to what was there before, right? So what was there before was the traditional workflows that we had, right? The fun chatbot about 1, 2, 3, like, and then 3, and then 4 again, and it sounds like back and forth. And that's the reason why it was acting like that was because it was following this traditional workflow, right? Because it had fixed inputs, it had a fixed path, it was working in the way that it was designed to. And that's the thing about them, that it's not that they're useless, it's just that they are very rigid. Now, in contrast to that, we have agents who can adapt a bit better, who have a bit of dynamic inputs, etc. Of course, whoever built agents also knows that there is not complete flexibility, that of course there is some still rules that you need to comply with, and there are tools that you need to build for it, etc. But still, compared to simple if-else operations, that is a significant improvement. So today, I brought something exciting. Well, it was supposed to be a live demo, but there were 2 factors why we're not having a live demo. First, the Wi-Fi connectivity that a lot of you have experienced yesterday. Secondly, I'm not as bold as Mark Zuckerberg to be like, oh, well, it's not working, let's move to the next release. So that's not going to happen. So what we have here is actually going to be a chatbot today, but not there yet. So first we're going to try to understand, why did I bring a chatbot to you? And Hercule Poirot, who is the famous detective on Orient Express, says something very important. That it's all in the psychology. And we are going to try to understand why chatbots are a good fit for this psychology, right? So first thing is that they're very conversational. So people like to talk. You would notice that. You would notice it from the very rapid adoption of ChatGPT. It turned out people actually don't mind chatting with technology. It's like not about keyword matching. We're not trying to find the 3 words and find the perfect thing that we're looking for. We actually don't mind sharing stuff with technology, discussing if it fits, if it doesn't fit. So this seems to be very much fitting into human psychology. We really like when technology is conversational, when it's interactive. Of course, the next thing is that it is scalable, right? So this is not about just, again, making Nensi happy about her experience as a customer, but we can actually scale this to almost all of our user base, right? And a lot of us have seen these chatbots or virtual assistant capabilities that are there. And finally, it is available. So I think all of us has experienced these things. After 5 years of living in Germany, I still leave things to do on Sunday, so which is a huge mistake, I know. And sometimes I'm like, where was that order? Or there was something wrong with my order, and I need to chat with someone about it. And then I open and it says, our support agents are only available Monday to Friday until like 6 p.m. And I wonder always, how should I circle this into my calendar and be like, okay, I put a blocker and say, okay, chat with a human agent, because that usually takes me at least 20 minutes as well before we can get all the conversations, all the details sorted out. So it's not that convenient, right? But with chatbots, if we are automating, they're actually there all the time. And the cool thing is that they are connected to everything, right? So if we connect these dots, essentially, chatbots are a way to make this interaction more one-to-one, right? Hyper-personalization is exactly about that each user gets the experience tailored for them. And we're going to see in a bit, how does that exactly work in a more tangible use case, let's say. And we also know that they're connected to the rest of the things, that they are have access to data, they have access to tools, they are conversational, we can scale them really easily. So all of these things bring us to the fact that maybe it's worth a try, right? And what if we put those things together, right? So let's have a look. So let's see if... Yeah, so here we're seeing an e-commerce kind of FAQ support dashboard. So imagine I'm a user, I use some e-commerce website, and I come in here. So instead of me looking and reading all that stuff, I immediately get greeted by an agent who already knows that I have an order. And that's very important, right? Because I don't have to provide order IDs, etc. All I can do is just, okay, I got the wrong size of a clothing, right? And I'm going to tell that to an agent. And on this side, you're seeing the logs that the agent is having. This is obviously not something that we're showing to the end user, but this is for us just to keep a trace of what's happening, right? And we are seeing that the agent is automatically figuring out how to solve these things. And we're going to be like, okay, it already knows what's inside my order perfectly. I don't have to tell it. I just have to tell what's wrong with it, right? And sometimes this happens. Sometimes the warehouses mix stuff and we don't know what they mixed up because obviously we don't have that data. And the customer is telling us, yeah, okay, well, we have an issue. What it's doing in the background here is actually going to a knowledge base that is connected to our company policies. So it's trying to understand, what do we do in this case when a customer is having similar problem, and it's already proposing me options how to solve that. Again, you see this shift from reactive to proactive. I'm not saying, how can I solve this? Can I get a refund? And you know, it always feels like you don't know what's the art of the possible for a company. You're always like, I don't know what I can do with this, right? And that's the cool thing, that here you don't have to do that, and it will do everything for you, essentially. It will create a replacement order if that's the option that you are choosing. And here we're going to say, yes, please do so. And the agent is going to be like, okay, I'm going to set that up. And why is it that hard to implement it now, right? Because we have all those tools in order to do this. And that's the cool thing, that the agent in this case is not necessarily acting on its own, right? It's acting based on all the things that a human agent would also do. It would go, spend all that time checking the company policy, trying to understand what to do, trying to give you solutions, and all of that is already in the reasoning part of our agent, and it's already doing all these things. So now, resolved. Easy, right? And that was very proactive as well. Like, I, as a customer, just had to essentially notify them that there is something that they have missed, that there is something that they are not aware of that is wrong. And we can have a look at another use case. So here we're again, here again we're greeted by the agent who already figured out not only the fact that I have an order, but it also calculated that there is a delay in that order. And it already looked at the company policy to identify when we have 12 days of delay, what's the company policy and what can we propose to a person, right? So this is a great opportunity for us to understand how agents can be like, hey, I'm not waiting for you to come say, hi, and then I tell you, oh, what's your order ID? Can you tell me exactly what's your tracking number? When was it supposed to come? And all these things, because I already know, right? When we're placing an order, we already know what's the estimated date of that delivery. So why would you ask me again and again, right? And here we're basically saying, okay, which option do we want? Here we're gonna take, like, again, a replacement order, and it's actually gonna have a look at the company policy and say, oh, we're gonna send this express to you without any cost, because obviously it was delayed for a way longer time, right? And then it also is gonna, here you're seeing that, okay, here we see how exactly it places this replacement order with all the things. It's asking, okay, do you want like all things, not all things? And then finally it's saying, yeah, when you receive those, you can leave those things to you as well, because that's our company policy of goodwill. If like we're delaying it too much, then you can leave the things that arrive and also the expedited order. And of course, we never forget to say thank you to chatbots, just in case they take over, you know, we always have to be nice to them. So as you can see, this is an interaction that was smooth. That was very frictionless. That was something that I, as a customer, want, because it took me, let's say, maximum 5 minutes to resolve something that usually, God forbid, I clicked the link from my email already, and they're gonna ask me the order ID, and I have to go back and then open it from another place. It becomes a nightmare for me, you know? I'm just like, why do I have to do these things? You know my name, you know my email address, you can retrieve all the orders that I have, which is exactly what the AI agent in this case is doing, right? So if we have a quick look, how did I build this? If anyone's wondering, I was leveraging Amazon Bedrock Agents. So it's the service on AWS that is actually like super managed, so you don't have to deal with a lot of stuff. It's quite for the sake of POCs and for doing things in a faster way, right? So this is not enterprise level thing. So the enterprise level thing is this one. So here you can scan the QR code and it will take you to a blog post that is actually about how to move from POC to production. And that's the next step, right? Like we're always getting people excited about tech through creating enticing demos, through creating like POCs, through telling stories, but all the engineers, software developers are going to come to you and say, can you give us the path to production? And this is essentially showing you all the tools that you would need to arrive there. And this is very like simple, I would say still. So in the chatbot demo that I showed you, I just had my agent. I just had two tools, just two of them, order and inventory. And essentially that was all I needed, right? Because I'm just checking the inventory for a replacement order, and I'm just grabbing the information about my orders in order to identify whether it's delayed, whether it's not delayed, and all of these things. So one thing is to bear in mind that you can plug in as many tools as you want to your agents, but be mindful of that, right? Because it's sometimes overwhelming if you have too many things. And think of it always as a perspective of like, if there was a human agent and you told them there's like 100 things where you can check, Would it feel overwhelmed? Probably yes. So try to consolidate those tools as much as possible and make it so that your tooling is serving a purpose, right? So all of those things, for example, order, inventory, they have very clear purpose, and it becomes very easy to plug them in when you know this purpose, because you know exactly what actions the agent needs to take, right? So what's our conclusion from this? That our users, they don't want to engage with us. It's not about like all the time talking, finding connections and all of that. In some problems, they just want to make things work, right? And these are a couple of examples of things that make our lives easier, right? Like Apple Pay is one. Then we have on Spotify, like playlists all for you, that I don't have to sit there for hours and pick up songs and stuff like that. That's just like making my life easier. And also the check-ins of the airlines. I feel like that's the most exciting thing, that the only time where I get excited that the booking reference and everything is autofilled. Not for all airlines, but for most of them already. This is all like something that I, as a customer, although I had a very short interaction, I felt so happy about it. And it's essentially important to do that also as a differentiator, right? Because everyone has a chatbot nowadays. But imagine, like I as a user who has interacted with 5 of them, and 5 of them annoyed me, and on the 6th of them, I'm having this type of an experience. And at that exact moment, I'm not going to focus that, oh, that was too quick, I didn't manage to connect with the brand. No, the opposite. I'm actually going to think, this was so cool. Like, this company understands me, knows me, and doesn't use me. Because a lot of the time, as users, we provide all this data to them, right? We have the interactions data, we have my email address, you have my gender, you have my height, you know what exact sizing of the clothing fits me, and somehow you can't figure out what's my order ID. And I have to copy paste that into this like chatbot interface. And as a customer, when I don't have to do that, I suddenly feel like, I like this company. So next time when they tell me, for example, oh, we're testing this beta virtual assistant to help you while you're shopping, guess which one I'm going to say, yes, I want to try that, and which one I'm going to say, hell no. And this brings you closer to your user experience, right? So we take one step back, kind of, and we're remembering that this was all to understand what's happening with user experience, right? So who is actually guilty of this? And the answer is quite interesting. So we had 3 suspects, right? We had data, we had complexity, and we had organizational structure. Well, none of them in separation, and yet all of them at the same time. So if you have seen Orient Express and the murder case, you know that in the end it turns out that all of them were involved in the murder, right? And that's exactly what's happening here. So in reality, it's not that any of them is particularly blocker. Any of them is not an excuse not to deliver on customer experience. But when you put these things together, when you condense them into one space, suddenly there becomes a lot of rigidity and a lot of friction, which becomes hard to cope both as a company and as a user, right? A lot of the companies that I work with come to me and say, hey, like the conversion rates are not good, like can we build something to solve that? And we can always build a lot of things. It's not about building a solution. Like, especially, oh, well, now it's gonna sound a little bit like boasting, but when you work at AWS, like, you can build anything because we have like a lot of Lego pieces, right? So you can put a lot of things together and then you have a solution. But the key point here is, do we know why we're building, for who we are building, and what is this outcome that we're trying to achieve? And is that visible? Is that visible for the customers that we have? And that's what I try to also communicate all the time, that when something works for one, it might not work for the other. I have a customer who is a retailer, and their user base is 60+ people. So their age is quite like big, and maybe they are not going to be the first people to chat with a chatbot, right? Because maybe they don't feel comfortable with it. And that's like an important thing to understand also your user, the way that they are acting, the way that they are behaving, the way that they are interacting with your brand. So essentially what allowed us to uncover this murder, right? And try to understand, how do we bring customer experience back from the dead? So first thing is, we were able to understand and catch the intent. So with any tech and anything personalization related, that's the key. And a lot of the companies are moving from this just like, oh, the user clicked on item A, B, C, to what was the intent of the customer when they came to our platform. And we're trying to understand the intent from the behavior, not just looking at the actions, right? We're trying to get into their head, what is the psychology behind it. Then, smooth integration. We saw that there was nothing breaking. There was nothing being like, oh, wait, like this is not possible to retrieve. Can you tell me again what size? Can you send me a picture? Can you do this? It's not about that. It's about me having as little friction points, having as little resistance when I'm trying to interact with your products and your brand, right? So I want everything to be a smooth ride. And yes, sometimes things break. That's normal. But in the end, that's our North Star. And we were super solution-oriented, right? It was never about, oh, your order is like wrong, or we sent you wrong item. We're so sorry about that. And then silence. And you're like, okay, like, am I supposed to, as a customer, give you like solutions how to solve this? Because that's confusing, because you also, as a customer, don't know if it's possible. Is it possible to get a full refund? Is it possible for them to send me the items again, because I don't know if they are in stock, right? So there are so many of those things that as a customer, you wonder, like, what's my next step? And that's what we need to avoid, because the point of the customer experience and improving it is actually to provide solutions before the customer brings them to you. We need to be the ones who are actually suggesting things, where we should be the ones that are telling our customer, hey, like these are the options, which one that works best for you, because we care about you. And that's very important. So in the end of the day, we don't need to collect more. We just need to connect more with our users. Thank you so much.